This war will go on as long as people believe in the extremist ideology of Osama bin Laden or the extremist ideology of Iranian-sponsored Shia revolutionary Iran. It's a long fight, it's a long struggle that's ahead.
We were trained to fight conventional warfare against a symmetrical opponent, the Soviet Union, in military terms only. We are waging a kind of war that's different than what the military was trained to do over the past 20 or 30 years.
And so, wherever possible, the U.S. military is lowering its profile, building local support by providing medical care where none exists, digging wells where water is scarce and hard to acquire. Here, in the small country of Djibouti and operating throughout the Horn of Africa, the American military presence is significant but discreet. Admiral Richard W. Hunt commands more than 1,700 U.S. service people from all 4 branches of the military.
We are clearly here to increase regional security. Regional security directly relates to global security, security back in the United States and with our allies. We want to prevent conflict. We want to prevail against extremism. Basically, this is all working against providing for safe havens where terrorists can operate and then eventually strike out against the United States or our allies.
As in Ethiopia, for example, where some of Admiral Hunt's forces have been running military operations with Ethiopian troops.
More discussion, more planning, right?
On the one hand, the U.S. military wants to keep a low profile where it can. It is also running desperately short on manpower. President Bush just last month announced the creation of a new Africa Command to take effect in 2008. But that merely puts a new command structure onto what already exists. A 40-minute helicopter flight south of Djibouti's capital city and a well dug 180 feet beneath the desert becomes the magnet for a new community. U.S. soldiers have dug and repaired dozens of such wells under the command of Army Captain Rachel Hundred.
If you provide them the water, they will develop a village or a community around that water. Once those basic needs like water are met, we can then help them to focus on these more important things, like, for instance, making this area inhospitable to terrorists.
There is nothing to suggest that the village of Galamo is of any strategic value to the United States. Its population, after all, is largely made up of subsistence farmers and shepherds. But it was here, in Galamo, back in 2004, that USAID built a health clinic. Dr. Stanislas Niebe, who is from Burkina Faso, runs this and a number of other clinics.
Most of them know that the health post, the activity, the equipment we have inside are provided by the American people.
Before the clinic was built, the nearest medical help here was a day's journey away on foot. In this small corner in the Horn of Africa, Americans are warmly regarded. And if the chief of Galamo, Hassan Abdullah Ali, that's him with his American flag, is to be believed, then this clinic is an outpost in the war against terrorism.
We are peaceful people, and the population of Galamo, as in the past, will be welcoming the Americans who will be helping us, and if anybody wants to hurt them, I can tell you that we will fight with the Americans against those ones who want to hurt them.
The health clinic at Aliade in Djibouti's southern district focuses primarily on children. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Dan Shore runs the clinic, which also trains local medics.
In a country like this, where you have issues of just basic malnutrition, you have increased disease.
Frequently simple, but without treatment, often deadly.
So we're talking about respiratory infections, diarrhea, some of the most basic diseases that unfortunately are much more difficult to treat here.
Another day, another mission, another country. This one launches from contingency operating location Manda Bay, a small deteriorating U.S. Navy camp perched on a fringe of jungle, about 120 miles south of the equator, on the northernmost part of the Kenyan coastline. Today's mission, a run to Pate Island, about 40 minutes off by fishing boat. Objective? Basic health care for the cattle and goats which roam all over the island.
The entire purpose of this is waging peace.
Lieutenant Commander Ray Alderson is Manda Bay's commanding officer.
Rather than waging war, we're waging peace with our partner nations. And the end result is down the road. We don't have to come in here to surgically remove a terrorist cell, because we've set the foundation for that terrorist cell not to develop here.
Make it difficult for them to maneuver, make it difficult for them to train, eliminate the safe havens, do that by providing security to nations throughout the globe. That, I think, is the essence of the long war.
Bilate, Ethiopia, a scant 6 miles from Somalia's northern border.
Begin!
These men, doing their morning exercises, are commandos from the Ethiopian National Defense Force. Putting them through their paces, a small detachment of American soldiers from the Guam National Guard, Lieutenant David Afison.
If we're able to strengthen our ties with sovereign nations, we're able to help them promote peace and stability around their own region. With that being done at this time, that will help us reduce any terroristic activities around their borders, which in turn will help us in the States.
I want you to go through the drill, starting off with arm, trump, and roll.
In this setting, it all seems somewhat removed from real war. The training in hand-to-hand combat seems unrelated to the scenes we're accustomed to seeing from Iraq. Under the guidance of their American instructors, the Ethiopians practice patrolling, then locating, surrounding, and overpowering an objective deep in the brush. It's a little difficult to imagine as the commandos communicate with one another by hand signals, but only a couple of weeks after this video was shot, the Ethiopian army invaded neighboring Somalia. During his terms as CENTCOM commander, General John Abizaid has come to believe that the Horn of Africa may be the most productive model for the long war.
The forces that we have in the Horn of Africa not only dug the wells, built the schools, did the work necessary, but they also kept an eye out for what was going on with regard to the extremist threats and activities that were emerging in the region.
The model of U.S. troops training indigenous forces in North Africa and then sending small units of Americans trained in special operations to fight alongside them in places like Somalia.
What are some things that went right?
That's the model that General John Abizaid likes best for the long war.
If you start contracting out the fight, I think you start ultimately walking away from your values.
It's impossible to say how or where the long war will end. But this is where the massive application of U.S. military power in that war began, in the mountains of eastern Afghanistan. But Koppel, the capital, is still struggling to its feet. The fight for control of the rest of Afghanistan remains unresolved. The Taliban are back and regaining pockets of influence. The democratically elected government of Hamid Karzai is weak and riddled with corruption. The lives of some women are improving, if only ever so slowly. There has been progress, but no one should be counting on a speedy U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. Colonel John Nicholson is the commander of Task Force Spartan, a unit of the Army's 10th Mountain Division. You'll be hearing more from him in a moment, but here's the headline.
The long war is an acknowledgement that the struggle here in Afghanistan is not simply a 1, a 2, even a 5-year endeavor. It is going to be a generational undertaking.
With the U.S. military and its NATO counterparts now battling a fully resurgent Taliban in large parts of Afghanistan, it's easier than ever to overlook the work of the provincial reconstruction teams. These PRTs, as they're called, operating in Afghanistan's eastern province of Nangarhar, are made up of U.S. troops, State Department officials, civilian contractors, local officials, and other Afghans.
It's really important that the Afghans put an Afghan face on these activities, that the people in the communities that will be served by the roads see this as an initiative that is theirs.
Brian Bacon represents the USAID on the Jalalabad reconstruction team.
This is your road. This is for you.
With a bomb-clearing squad leading the way and checking the road for improvised explosive devices, Bacon and his counterparts from the U.S. and Afghan military travel across the province, inspecting construction on a local government building.
No more than a 3mm variance between any of them.
A ribbon cutting for a local civic center. Visiting a school for construction trades. Meeting with an important local official about security and reduction in the opium crop.
Have you had a chance to take a look at it, and do you have any feedback for us?
As they leave, Army Captain Neil Tho emerges holding hands with the provincial sub-governor.
The first time that happened, it was a little culturally shocking, probably. Yeah. You see them do it all the time, though. That's how friends talk. And so when the Shirzad sub-governor and I walked down out of his office, holding hands, I wanted to convey the message to him that we are friends.
And perhaps to reciprocate the cross-cultural gesture, another Afghan official joins the officers for an American-style cookout, even as he seems a bit wary of his hamburger.
Eventually, the end state would be for the people to choose to support their own government and reject whatever's being offered by the enemy.
It's a function of security and confidence. The Americans are here in force now, but where will the Americans be 5 or 10 years from now?
In case of an IED, everybody knows 300 meters forward, 300 meters back.
You have only to set out for the Afghan-Pakistani border with the Army's 272nd Military Police Company, and it's clear that large chunks of Afghanistan remain in a state of war. Pro-Taliban forces have engaged U.S. and NATO troops in fierce fighting in the south and east of the country since last spring. This coming spring is expected to bring even heavier fighting. The United Nations reports that the country's poppy production, which fuels the world's heroin supply and the insurgency, reached record levels in 2006.
Back up. See those signs? See signs. Back them up.
The insurgents, their weapons, those opium shipments all move back and forth across the Pakistani border. So these MPs from the 272nd are headquartered just 2 kilometers from the legendary Khyber Pass.
We're here on the border because a lot of our intel indicates that not only the fighters but also the materials from which they use come in through the border, right through our gate here. Right by our front gate is one of the main highways, and then to our north and south are several secondary infiltration points, and we have pretty hard evidence that the materials are coming in this way through Pakistan.
Captain Renee Ramsey heads a platoon of MPs at the base, which has been attacked by insurgents 12 times in the year or so since she arrived.
This would be our collection of rockets that have impacted Torkham Fire Base. And unfortunately, we are located in a bowl, nothing but mountains surrounding us, so there are more than enough spots for the Taliban and any insurgent forces to set up shop and rocket us from. It's a big boom. It'll shake the place.
But that's not what the struggle's about here. The struggle is about the people. And the classic phrase of hearts and minds is one way to look at it. We like the description of human terrain because it implies that the terrain, which is typically the metric of military operations, is now human, and it conveys the importance of it.
But if that's the terrain that the U.S. is trying to conquer, the war is not going well. That part of the story when we come back.